On the show today, Kasia Urbaniak. So she is Your Highness, power expert, author, TED speaker, background as a dominatrix and in Taoism. So really juicy combination. My PAV, special thank you to her. I think she's been really into your work, Kasia, for a while. And I suspect in her free time, it's private time, she's a naughty girl. And she said, she's going to love this woman. You're going to love this woman. So she set this up. And yeah, Kohania, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here. I love what you do. I love what you do, Mark. I love what you do in its authenticity, in its simplicity, in its directness, and its inapplicability to almost all situations.
I'll take it. Thank you.
One of my favorite things to do is to watch you on Instagram and watch your demos. It's like demo.
The 1 minute demos, people like the 1 minute demos.
It's instant magic. People get it. They don't have to understand it theoretically. They see it and they're like, oh, oh, oh.
But we're not going to talk about me just yet. Let's talk about you. So
Okay.
I would love to hear how you got interested in power and what you do now. Tell us a bit about your story, because it's a juicy one.
Well, when I was quite young, I was looking for magic, to be most direct. I was very interested from a young age in if there was anything beyond what I was seeing, beyond school, beyond work, beyond cities, beyond. And first chance I got, I went on a quest to find magical masters that could teach me things. And I went and discovered many things, but Taoism really hooked me for about a dozen years. And unlike in the movies, if you're looking for magical teachers and are on a magical quest, you still have to find a way to pay for it. Flights are expensive, accommodations expensive, sometimes visas are expensive. So I was working in New York City as a dominatrix. And it was really an odd combination, but intuitively perfect.
Okay, so two parts. Let's talk about Taoism first. So for those who aren't familiar, maybe they've read the Tao Te Ching, or they've got some sort of passing familiarity with a yin yang symbol or something. How would you explain Taoism?
Well, Taoism is it's not a religion, it's a spiritual tradition, but it is where Chinese medicine, acupuncture, and many Chinese martial arts come from. Qigong, if you've done Tai Chi, if you've ever had, acupressure, Chinese herbs, acupuncture. So it's this really broad system of, I'd say, following the way, the Tao, which is nature, following what wants to happen in the body for healing, following what wants to happen in the body for vitality, strength, for self-defense. And it's actually, I feel like I got really lucky because that as a spiritual tradition, as a path, it has so much grounded, embodied, practical applicability to it. So you can get really metaphysical and dissolve into non-dual, understanding of the universe, but you're still healing the sick and you're still strengthening your body. And in a way that is very comprehensive and all fits together.
And what's your main application of that now? Is it the sort of martial arts side? I know you've done some stuff on self-defense, I think. You're mostly coaching women. What's your kind of main use?
Well, this is funnily enough where the dominatrix part kicks in. Because for about a dozen years, my life was very intensely split between these deep dives into meditation and healing practices, and then these intense marathons of money making working at a BDSM dungeon, where I'm a young woman, usually in a imaginary power dynamic with a man twice my age, with a lot more status and power in the world. And the thing that became very apparent is that everything that I was learning to see when diagnosing a patient or learning about my own embodied development as a martial artist, or in doing Tai Chi or Qigong, or in doing, again, like being able to look at a body and be like, where is it stagnant? Where is it stuck? What organs might be out of balance? applied that inadvertently to my scenes in the dungeon where I'm pretending to be Wonder Woman or a vicious school teacher, and I'm pretending that this man is as a young boy or the villain in some crime drama. And I think the intensity of switching back and forth between those started affecting how I saw people relating to each other in the world. So the first thing that I saw very clearly is, especially when I was training with these nuns in China, how incredibly rooted and grounded they were, how incredibly this particular order was celibate, but their root, pelvic, erotic, lower chakras were so pulsing, strong, rooted. They all felt like they were icebergs. Like I was seeing the top 9% of their bodies.
Mhm.
And then I looked around and I saw what was happening with most of the women that I was encountering walking down the street. High chest breathing, easy to tip over, easy to miss what they were saying unless they were really upset, like. And then I started realizing that the fake performance of being a dominatrix that's incredibly powerful, for it to be convincing and resonant, I had to drop down like the nuns. And I started noticing that the more rooted a woman was, her voice started to change, her mannerisms started to change, the quality of her energy started to change, her presence became more palpable. And this bias, this almost imaginary corset that so many women I was encountering were inadvertently wearing, the more it got released, the more powerful and playful a woman was likely to come across, the more resilient. And it was such a dumb, basic, yet huge, life-changing, groundbreaking discovery. That one thing. How is it that these nuns in China were so much more hot, even though they were celibate? The main abbess was almost terrifying to be around in a way that was truly delightful. Like the air would bend around her, like that level of, oh, I am looking into the eyes of the universe right now. Like, wow. And I think, saying embodiment is, the word embodiment is tricky because it's everything. It's everything. It's the root of everything. It's the being in human being. But getting to a place where we understand how to engage that consciously is probably the most important pivotal works of our time.
Nice. Let's go back to you being a dominatrix. Actually, is that something you still do, or is that something that was historical for you?
Historical. I did it for about 17 years, and I think most of the last 10, 11 years I've been too busy teaching.
Uh-huh. So I'm imagining there's a full spectrum of people listening. I know we have some sort of hardcore kind of kink people listening. We've had various people on talk about that, lots of good stuff on consent culture, for example. And we also have, sweet, innocent girls in the Greek countryside who, don't know what a scene is. So we might have to explain some of the terminology here. What's different from the reality from maybe, if I think dungeon, I think some New York businessman who's very powerful in the day, but they get a kick out of being tied up and spanked in the, in the evening to kind of unwind. Like, what's different in the reality than the kind of that imagining or that fantasy?
I can only speak from my own experiences, but in my experience, what people least expect is the degree of authentic intimacy and genuine connection that can happen between two people who are not even revealing their real names to each other. And they're not even exchanging what most people would consider typically sexual acts. So one of my specialties was role play. I really, really heavily leaned on the fantasy, conversation, scene building. So it's theater. But one of the biggest things I saw, especially for the men who were inclined to do sessions with me, is they needed a scene in which they felt like I had enough under control that they could allow themselves, their nervous systems, to fully relax, surrender, release, and receive. And many of these men were go, 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 go all day long. And regardless of what their kink was or whether they even genuinely had one, because I definitely had clients who were there exploring and returned because they liked how it made them feel without even fully understanding why. Right? But that required an incredibly strong, grounded, safe space where they knew they could without shame. And some of the most beautiful moments were ones in which I felt the other person truly able to access a sense of almost childlike playfulness, almost abandon of outward identity. Like in entering that fake room, that fake dungeon, that fake theater, we both left our regular selves outside the door. And then inside that space with a dropping of identity could take on different roles. And that wouldn't have been possible if there was nobody in charge.
So particularly for people in charge, maybe in most of their lives, the idea of giving that over to someone else, particularly if they're grounded, embodied, clear, competent, is a relief, right? There's some sense of, oh, thank God. Like I would experience that if I was in training with a very good trainer. I'll be like, okay, great. This person can lead. I can follow. You know, I heard you talk in your book talking about how dogs do this. Like
Yeah.
dogs quite like me because I'm like, I'm the boss and
Yeah.
I'm not going to hurt you. And dogs are like, okay, right?
Yeah.
There's a kind of release in that for the dog. And I think for all of us as well, right? There's a release in whether we have this just occasionally in our sex life or just generally, you know, some people it's more diffuse across their life. There's some release in going, there's someone ethical, competent, and clear who can take the lead so I don't have to.
Yes, and I would argue that this need to feel like somebody has the situation under control and is dependable in a way that our bodies know. It's not intellectual. It's not like I trust like my body is actually something that is in short supply for everyone right now of every gender, and regardless of whether it's experienced as sensual, erotic, kinky, or just like we are all on executive function, outside attention almost all the time. I can't think of a person, whether they say they like it or not, who doesn't feel good in good hands, just letting go for a moment.
Sure. Sure, like good massage, good whatever it is, yeah. And there's I sort of I remember I went to a physio not long ago, and I'd had a couple of bad physios. I said, look, just give me the best, most experienced physio you got. And I walked in this physio's room. She was like posh, 55 maybe, British, and she was like, right, Mr. Wolf, sit down. And I just thought, God, she just reeks of competence, this woman. And I was like, yes, what are we doing? Acupuncture, massage. And within like 5 seconds of being in there, I already felt better because I've been
Yeah.
dealing with these young boys who they couldn't meet me in that. She just had this level of competence that was just obvious from every piece of her embodiment.
Right. And like you got to access a part of yourself that you wouldn't have otherwise, right?
Yeah, I go to sleep in her sessions. She put acupuncture needles in me, and I just napped because I'm completely at ease, you know. And,
Yeah, yeah. And you can't fake that either, because this is one of the things that really annoys me about the mandate for respect or intimacy or trust. Just trust, just trust. I'm like, it doesn't work that way.
trust the process. Fuck your process.
Yeah, there's no.
Yeah, no, you have to show it, don't you? You have to embody it. So again, just for fun, then, what are the I guess this is not my thing, right? But what are the scenes people are into? Like teacher, naughty, schoolboy, like just for fun, I want to know. What are the main setups?
A lot of them are like playful rehashings of all the stereotypical roles we have. Um, like teacher, boss secretary. I for some reason got a lot of superhero ones, so I was Wonder Woman or variations of Wonder
You were
Woman.
like saving them or what? What's the deal there?
Many different scenarios. One is,
Okay.
one is I have my, cyber hacker who is helping me, but he betrays me, and then I have to imprison him and punish him. Or like, one of my specialties, this is going to sound kind of intense, but one of my specialties was also long-term interrogation sessions. So I do 24-hour, 48-hour sessions where I would just be interrogating. Usually, if
Wow.
it's 24 hours, you want to get some partners in crime. You want to do shifts.
Sure. And if they're blindfolded, they don't know who's spanking them anyway, as one of my friends in the industry used to say. but it's like some Kiefer Sutherland shit, some like 24 you've got to get the information
Yeah.
out of them. Like, what
Well,
is
one of the
this?
things that's really interesting about an interrogation session is after about 20, 40 minutes, reality starts to dissolve because you don't even know what you're asking
Yeah,
about anymore. And
yes.
all of a sudden it becomes like just you're asking questions and the nervous system of the other person's responding. And there can be a lot of imagination. I've never told this story before, but my very last session ever, my very last session as a professional dominatrix was a client coming to me and saying, I'd like an extended interrogation session, and here's the scene. I mean, this, he goes, you run a unique secret organization that is a school for women, and you've kidnapped me. And over the next 2 days, you are going to use me as a guinea pig to show all the other women in the room how men work. And the bizarre part was not only did I do it, I imagined all of these imaginary women in the room and spent this weekend talking to these imaginary women in the room. 2 months later, I had a school.
You were literally doing that, huh?
2 months later, I had a school that had I didn't decide to start teaching. I was asked to start teaching. So it was almost like I still don't even understand how that happened to this day.
Nice. Let's get to women in a minute. Before we do, um, how does this intersect with trauma? Because I've definitely seen some kink that was very healing to trauma. And I've
Mhm.
also seen both personally and, kind of talking to guests and things on the podcast, people who I go, oh, you're just playing out some unhealthy shit. And no, I won't slap you in the face. That doesn't feel good.
Mhm.
Right? Like, and there's other people who it's like, oh, awesome. You're getting a homeostatic dose of what you need. You're working through a window of tolerance. You're building capacity, or you're somehow balancing and imbalancing your life. Like the classic businessman who wants to be dressed up as a baby. Like it can seem in some cases profoundly unhealthy, and in some
Mhm.
cases profoundly healthy. So my guess is you're pretty trauma informed from reading your stuff. What's your take on how trauma interacts with the whole kink scene, but domination submission in particular?
I learned about trauma after I stopped working because I started working as a dominatrix in the late 90s, early 2000s, and trauma wasn't a thing. I knew the whole the like looking back, I'm actually surprised by how much of my entire learning journey was intuitive. And based on having really paying really close attention, not in a mental thought way, but in an empathetic way to what was happening with the body of my submissive. So there would be a moment where you start approaching an edge, which I might say could be a trauma or a place where there might be trauma. And there's a moment where it feels good, then a moment where it feels edgy, and there's a moment where it feels like I go any further, I'm going to shut this person down. I'm going to isolate that really juicy, flowing, free circulation. Like here's the thing: in Chinese medicine, the root of all illness is stagnation, and the Taoist quest is one that's very based in qi and circulation of energy. And without knowing anything about trauma and without being skilled in that way, I feel like the only thing I was looking for is where is the life force? Where is it trapped? Where can it be released? And I would never hit too hard, apply too much pressure, use too harsh language, because that would shut somebody down. And feeling where is not enough and where is too much um, served me, I think, well enough to understand what was healthy, because the goal was always to create more free flowing energy.
Right.
Release of shame, for example, is one of the most beautiful floods of release and relief and free flowing circulation. Just by, saying, yes, you can be on your knees. Sometimes like that releases such a flood of and channeling that into an erotic context or into an orgasmic context is one choice of many and a very satisfying one. Right? You feel good. You feel so good. Um, so It's only now where I'm like, oh, trauma. Oh.
So you were sort of intuitively getting there's a window of tolerance. You were intuitively doing attunement and somatic influence. Like I was just teaching coaches the last week in Croatia, and it's like, okay, you have to be tuned in to your partner. And, this question is it too much? Is it too little? It's actually a very profound question, right? And the attunement to that rather than I'm just going to keep whipping away or spanking away and just irrespective. Is this creating flow? Is this opening them up? Is this too much?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a hell of a training in, was it 17 years you said? A hell of a training in feedback. Like somebody said, how did you get good at reading bodies? And I said, well, I did Aikido with about 10,000 people. And, I also spent a year asking 1,000 women for their phone number in different countries and just massively like getting lots and lots of feedback as to, oh, this person is open, this person is closed. This person is aggressive, this person is scared. Like you have to touch a lot of bodies to get that feedback. And then when you take that into coaching, you've now, I imagine, got this level of skill that you build from that very intense situation to take into your like verbal interactions.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I
Mm.
mean, this may sound overly simplistic, but when you're working with another person, it's an open book test. Like the answers are there. And you try, all of your tools, the sound of your voice, the pace of your voice, the pitch of your voice, your body posture, what you're asking about, the speed at which you're asking about it. And those are all like the strokes of a dominatrix, right? You spank somebody too light, they get irritated. It's like too light a massage. You spank someone too hard, they shut down. It's like same thing with a massage. Same thing with language. Same thing with interaction. Some questions are very penetrating and piercing. Some questions are very soft and embracing. Some vocal tones, some pitches, right? So you like, same way, you might be massaging someone or caressing someone, you watch and see what's happening to them as you speak, as you look, and they're giving you all the answers. They're giving you all the answers. They're
Right.
either getting more tense and more distant and higher up in their bodies, or less under, right? Or they're or they're melting. Just melting and connecting.
The dog doesn't speak English, right? It's not the important thing, is what you say, but how you say it.
And I think that's one of the reasons we understand, us and canines understand each other so well.
See, I had a lover recently, yesterday actually, who it doesn't, he stopped being able to speak English at a certain point, but she was saying in Italian, just keep speaking in the nice deep voice. I don't care what you're saying. Just like read the back of the cornflake packet. I don't give a shit. Just keep speaking. And I was like, oh, okay. It's not the words, it's the tone, it's the intent, right? Yeah. So you mentioned like a lot of people today, and I know you particularly work with women, up here, anxious, unstable, kind of not the kind of spiritual weebles you found in the Taoist nuns, but the top heavy. Why? Why is that? Why are so many people not grounded, anxious, not in contact with power in that way?
If you were asking me that question about people in general or women, the answers might be different.
Okay, both is fine.
Taking a moment to see if there's an answer that applies to both, because I can see how I mean, there are 100 reasons why. There's 100 reasons why. Sexual shame, first of all. Every woman sucking in her stomach, even just physiologically, just literally holding their bodies in a particular way. It just affects your circulation, your nervous system, all of it, your breathing. People forget that it's quite recent that women get to not be property. And that's still, right? Like your body is not your own body. You belong to your husband, your father. The laws have been changing only in the last 100 years or so. That's not that long.
Well, men were mostly property until a few hundred years before that.
Agreed.
Right. So, I mean, women are, catching up, as it were, there, but most men have been, my granddad was a peasant in Ireland, right? Like this is most of human history, most of us have been under the yoke of pharaohs and kings of various kinds.
Yeah. Now we have such a reliance on the intellect and on technology and the interaction we're having right now. Right now, you and I are not in the same room. And it's super cool that we can talk and that we can record it, right?
But weird, super weird as well, right? Super cool and super weird.
Like I'm wearing pajama bottoms, you know?
I'm not wearing it. That's
um, I think we're in really interesting times this way because, okay, so there are probably 1,000 reasons why we now have a word like embodiment. That it's almost sad that we need it, and I'm so grateful that we have it.
Right, like if we didn't have a problem, we wouldn't have the word.
Yeah, because it would just be the being and human being, right? It'd just be like, yeah. One of the reasons I love watching your videos and I love what you do is because it's such a direct look into the inherent wisdom that we all carry inside of ourselves. I want to say something that's kind of controversial. I believe that with deep embodiment, morality becomes less and less necessary.
Okay, say more.
The more deeply tapped in you are to yourself as a physical, emotional, mental human being, the more deeply embodied you are, the more it feels bad to do harm, the more it feels good to do good. In a very simple way. Like you are at ease, you feel good. They're good.
So you mean cognitive rule-based morality becomes less necessary because there's an empathic resonance with other people, and virtue itself starts to feel wholesome, nourishing, and you're in touch with that. So you don't so much need the commandments kind of version of morality.
Yes, and this is the progressing and the controversial part. You asked about why I think that people are disconnected from their bodies or power, like how did it happen? And I said men, women. If you think about the Judeo-Christian underpinnings of all of our thoughts, even people who are not religious, the Judeo-Christian underpinnings imply and say that the physical body is animalistic and amoral. Do not trust your body. Do not trust your body. Do not trust your body. And if you look at something even like the 7 deadly sins in Catholicism, I would argue that all of those are healed by embodiment. So take greed, for example.
Go for it.
If you want more, and get more, and get more, and that feeling of wanting more and getting more doesn't stop, it's because you're not in your body to receive the experience of having, therefore feel satiety and feel satisfied. Same thing with gluttony. Same thing with sloth. How much rest do you need before you feel ready and tired of laying on the couch? Like deep, true rest. It's the same with vanity, with rage. Rage is like super pervasive anger. When you feel angry, the first moment is a moment of anger. The second moment is angry that you're angry. The next one is also angry that you're angry that you're angry. Same thing with sadness turning into depression. Same thing with anxiety. You're not just anxious. You're anxious that you're anxious that you're anxious. What is the antidote to all of that? Embodiment. You feel the first thing. You feel it in the first place. Learn to contain and have all that energy. So I think we're coming into, I hope, the possibility of human beings being consciously alive in their experience and tapping into that deeper wisdom that's available when everything that's happening inside of you is accepted because it's happening inside of you.
Disembodied sin. I'm going to have to think deeply about that. That's a great gift. Thank you. I'm going to think about that one. just by way of being fair to our Judeo-Christian listeners, I know some of my Jewish friends tell me that Judaism is far less disembodied, and giving a wife an orgasm on the Sabbath is a mitzvah. And there's definitely an embodied tradition in Judaism and in Christianity, though there's definite disembodied traditions. And we also shouldn't mention we should mention Islam as well. Like, I think perhaps one of the bigger disembodying forces in much of the world. And well, you know, if we're really controversial territory, I think it's unfair to mention two of the big monotheistics without the third. But Buddhism has its embodied and disembodied sides. So just to be fair to the people listening to this, there's definitely traditions of all three of the monotheistics, which are disembodied and embodied. Like, I know
I guess another way of thinking about it or talking about it, to be fair and to give respect where respect is due, is that there's religion and then there's what people do with it. They're not the same. There's the initial intent to explore and express the divine, and then there's what people do with ideas. That they're not the same.
Okay, tough question. Are women victims? So at the moment in culture, I hear this strong narrative, particularly from middle-class American white women, frankly, that women are victims as a group, generally. You know, we live in a patriarchy, you know, there's this idea, which for me doesn't match my experience of the strong Irish women I grew up with, or East European women that I adore and spend a lot of time with in Poland and Hungary and Ukraine. But it's certainly appealing. There's certainly a currency to victimhood. And there's someone who's worked with power and, you know, the payoffs, as it were, of being a submissive. Well, what's your thoughts on, are women as a group victims, and are there maybe payoffs to believing that?
I think are women victims is the wrong question. I think a better question would be, what are the ways in which women are carrying a victim pattern? What are the ways in which men are carrying a victim pattern? What are the ways in which any disenfranchised group or any group that has had its own particular because one thing that's really annoying about what's happening in the world is everybody's now declaring victim privilege. Everybody's a victim. Everybody's a victim.
Everyone wants in on it. They want in on it.
Everybody, we're having victim wars now. To be able to, in one's personal history or in one's group history, go, hey, this occurrence had an impact and a consequence, and we're working to undo that consequence. You could say one of those for men is men having to go to war created a pattern where not feeling is preferable to feeling.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, you're Polish, right? I mean, Poland lost the bigger percentage of its population in World War II than any other country, and the majority of those were men.
That's right. And you see it in the people, you see it in the gender relations too. The ways in which women are strong, or the ways in which they have to be, the ways in which men are wounded. But it doesn't go away overnight. So I think that in the theater of life, we need to be able to play victim, perpetrator, and something other. Like, we have to be able to imagine both, because, you know, okay, one thing that I noticed is really helpful is when somebody's been sexually traumatized, especially in young childhood, it is actually really helpful for them to be able to declare the space of victim. And
Yes.
I was victimized, right?
Yes.
I was victimized, right? However, it's a stage, right? I was victimized. That story gets to ring out. That narrative gets to play out. And then after, you know, I've worked with women who did not want to admit to sexual abuse because it took away their agency, and it does. So it makes you feel like you have no control. So going into victim and acknowledging that a victim thing happened is a stage. And then there is another stage where you're the author of your existence.
Yeah.
And all those things. And this is the thing that's really wonderful about role play. Really wonderful about role play is you can explore different stories without an identity crisis and get the benefits, the emotional healing, the release, the perspective of being someone who was at the effect of a thing, the creator of a thing, and also an observer of a thing.
Nice. Nice. I was just talking to a friend of mine who works in the humanitarian sector. And it's a lot of the problems there come from an inability to acknowledge people's own victimhood, because they're always in the savior role, the rescuer role, you know, in the triangle. And they certainly can't imagine themselves in the persecutor role, God forbid. You know, I have a lot of activist friends who absolutely are never the persecutor. And that means all this weird shadowy behaviors coming out,
Yeah.
right? It's one of the things I found most healthy psychologically about Aikido is you get to be in, it's this role-taking nature of Aikido.
Yes.
You know, you get to be pinned and then you get to do the
Yes.
pinning. You get to throw,
Yes.
you get to do the throwing. And that somehow felt very healthy psychologically.
Yeah. Oh, I love Aikido. Um, yeah, yeah. And I mean, I think it's like also one of the really gorgeous things about being a human on this planet and getting a lifetime is like you actually can have, you can experience the play from many different parts. And there are, you know, what you're talking about, the shadowy side of humanitarian instincts. I mean, savior, perpetrator, all these roles can get awfully close.
How did it, 17 years of Dominatrix, how did that, I mean, you're practicing something there, right? You're embodying something, even if it's role taking. You've done some serious reps, you know, you've done the hours. Like, how did that impact you just generally walking around the street? Were
Well, if
you
you
like, where's my Starbucks? You know, like or was it the opposite? Were you like super sweet the rest of the time because you probably could got that out of your system in that work?
um, well, the funny part is I became a pretty good dominatrix pretty quickly. Not because I had a natural dominant side, but because I was a natural people pleaser.
Because it's a
Or
surface position.
let's say not even like not even like a natural people pleaser, but like almost maybe a pathological people pleaser. And I was just like, I have to do a really good job. I almost feel like I got tricked into power. I was like, I have to do a really good job convincing this person that they're in trouble and I'm mad at them. I have to do a really good job, but I have to do it in exactly the way that's going to deliver what they're looking for. Um, well, I think one of the first effects is that I did in my life become a lot more fluid about how I interacted with people. Like I could understand how I would need to be stern or soft or something to achieve a particular effect, right? To make somebody feel safe or, you know, even in interactions in restaurants, like how do you get a waiter's attention? Before I started working as a dominatrix, I was a person who had trouble asking for water in a restaurant. Like I did not want
Right.
to anybody. I didn't want to interrupt anybody. I did not want to. And there was something about this strange double life where I was acting like I had all this power that started to infiltrate, but not necessarily in being the dominatrix in life, but being able to see in the beginning, like what I could get away, like what role I could play to get what I needed. And that imagination, I mean, you could say manipulation, but really I was manipulating my own experience. Made me look at behavior as something separate from people, right? Like you could behave a certain way, right? And it's not who the person is, it's the tool they're employing in order to achieve a particular effect. Another thing that happened though is that I ended up really being curious about people's secret and hidden desires, their kinks. You know, like first warm week in New York City, riding on a subway, I'd play a game of like, who here's a foot fetishist? And it's actually quite easy because the sandals come out. A particular kind of gaze and looking at feet begins to happen. But even being like, oh, what's their kink? What's their kink? What's their secret thing? It creates a kind of habit of when relating to people being like, well, what is it they really are looking for? What is it that really matters to them? What is it?
Nice.
What is it that they're protecting right now? What is it that they're holding as dear? What is it that they're holding back? Where can we meet in that? Can I find it and meet in that place? Because I think there's only one thing more satisfying to a submissive than having their desires met, and it's having desires they didn't even know they had revealed.
Yeah,
In a
like when I go to my physio. And I'm like, I'll sleep on the couch. I love you. Okay, so why are hippies so scared of power? People in counterculture, particularly, seem to be really scared of power, whether it's financial power. Like I've put on muscle the last couple of years, and it's like getting all these weird fucking responses from people. You know, I haven't suddenly started bullying people, but all these weird responses having a physical, powerful body. The moment I was successful, about the last 3 years, I've had some success in the field, and that created all kinds of weird responses from my counterculture friends. Like they hated it. I lost a load of friends. And financially, a lot of my colleagues seem to be really trying hard to stay broke. And my conclusion seems to be they have like this absolute terror of power, male and female. But yeah, any thoughts on why?
Arrogance. I think when you're really invested in making the world a beautiful place and a great place for all people, it's really easy to see what's unfair. And it's really easy to get spooked about being part of what's unfair. And I'm half joking when I say arrogance, but there's this idea, there's this like vibe that starts to become all pervasive that you, in achieving any kind of strength, power, financial, career, physical advantage, are now the perpetrator.
Right, you're a bad person if you've won.
You're hurting others, and you're taking advantage of a rigged system.
Zero sum you must have taken from someone to have won.
Yeah, and when I have students, especially for example, in my money classes, when there's two things they say when I ask them how much money they want. One, first thing they say is, I want so much money, when they finally confess that they want money because they're in the class. I want so much money that I never have to think about money.
Right.
Which is ridiculous, right? Like,
yeah.
Like you would never say that about love. I want a lover so wonderful I never have to think about them. I want a house so wonderful I never have to live in it.
It's another form of denial, right? It's like I don't want, it's dirty, so I don't want to think about it. So I want a lot, so I don't have to think about it.
There's a disembodiment and a disowning happening there. But then the next thing that happens is they start saying, okay, I want a lot, but I'm gonna do such good things with it. They haven't even gotten it, and they're already
yeah. It's for other people. It's so I can take my kids to university. I can give it away.
Yeah. And that is, it's kind of hubris. It's deciding, it's deciding that I know that I want to make everything fair, so I'm not going to give myself that which is available to me. You're not being a person, you're being the overlord.
Nice. Invite me to your class on money. I'm curious about that. I've done a lot of work on this, but I want to take it to the next level because I'm helping a lot of mentees on this, and it's such a problem for them. So I'd love to.
And for us who are really interested in embodiment, because money in and of itself is an abstraction of physical form, it's double the work. It's double the work. How do you embody the having of money? Paradox there, because the closest experience you can have to embodying money is spending it to have a physical thing that you can hold and touch. So it's in the losing of it that you experience its embodiment.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. In the losing of it, you experience the embodiment. Yeah. What's with all the flowers behind you? They're absolutely beautiful. I really like flowers, by the way. I used to be a gardener. I love flowers. What's with all the flowers? Podcast listeners can't see this, but YouTube listeners, you're missing out on a couple of levels here. So what's with all the flowers today?
This is where this is the backdrop I designed to teach my summer course, Summer Love School. So the theme is very feminine, very floral.
Like, I have a plain white wall and Airbnb. It's really today, pure consciousness and pure flow.
I have this altar. It's kind of an altar to Venus.
Is that Venus behind you?
No, it's actually Cleopatra. She's,
Oh,
she's a
okay.
painting from a power course.
Well, I'm glad she's the right color because she was Greek. So you've done better than Netflix at least. So yeah, Cleopatra. That's good. Good. What have we not talked about that you fucking love talking about?
I don't know. Like mainly the topics that come to mind are the topics I would love to talk to you about over a beer.
Well, we're definitely going to do that if I'm in New York. That's you're always welcome in mine. And yeah, I should be teaching in New York this year. It may or may not happen, but if I am, then you're generally based in New York City, right?
I'm actually quite split.
Yeah.
I lived in Paris last year. The um the thing that I think is really wonderful that I would love to talk to you about over and over again is just the satisfaction of being able to bring another human being into a state where in just the span of a few minutes they have access to a power or a feeling of themselves as strong, tall, beautiful, um, without all of the 20 years of talk therapy, just like in just a few moments being like, here, it was always in you, it's available, it's accessible to you,
Yeah.
you can return to it, and it's the language your own body speaks when it wants to say, I love myself, or I am here. And there's such an innocence to it, there's such a freedom from just such a freedom there. And I know I have seen it on your face. I know I know what you look like when you see someone else get it.
Yeah, it's a nice feeling. Nice feeling. There's a certain, I remember Paul Linden teaching me that there's a certain look where they get it. And it's funny, people sometimes say at the 1 minute coaching sessions, they say, are they fake? Are they set up? I'm like, no, 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 100% live. Every single one of them is a human being with a real challenge, you know? But good,
It's just
good.
such good news to be able to tell somebody, hey, look, you have these resources within you that you may not know you've had. And tapping into them it can take you about 60 seconds. Like that's such a gift.
What was the self-defense stuff you did? We found something on the internet about this. Like, it's kind of surprised. Was it physical, psychological, all of the above?
For the verbal self-defense dojo.
Yeah, yeah. What do I do? Give me a lesson in that. How do I have verbal self-defense?
That was something that got created at the height of the Harvey Weinstein Me Too kind of big 2018 moment in America, where women wanted to have tools to be able to deal with sexual harassment that didn't involve that were in the moment, right? I was creating a tool that a woman could use in the moment, not calling
Uh-huh.
HR,
Sure.
not going to complain later, but in the moment, because what was it's a tool designed to help women who are freezing when they're being propositioned in an appropriate way. And the aikido of it, right? The judo of it
You want a demo?
really had everything to do with putting the attention on the person who was asking the inappropriate question.
Uh-huh. So turning it around. So how
Yeah.
would that look? I'd say something inappropriate.
Say something inappropriate to me. Ask me an inappropriate question.
Do you, I don't know, do you get naked when you do podcasts normally?
Do you like asking inappropriate questions?
I do.
Were you thinking about me naked while we were doing this podcast? Are you
That-
embarrassed or proud of yourself for misbehaving right now?
I'm slightly amused. That's great. So
Right.
you turn it back, you just turn it back around.
Mhm. Yeah, but the key is so actually my first big event in London, 600 women, right? This
Yeah.
every single time I demo this is what happens. I say, I'm going to ask you an inappropriate question. Ask me a question back. No matter what it is, ask me a question back. Doesn't matter if it's where did you get your shirt, right? So I say, hi, do you like giving blowjobs on a first date? I give them the mic and they go, and
So
everyone laughs.
you ask me that, I say, is that something you had in mind? Right.
Right,
So I turn it around. Yeah.
right,
I
right,
said that makes a juicy
right,
image in your head, huh?
right.
So I'm okay, good, good.
There,
Cool.
there
Like
is
it.
a thing happening underneath there that you as an Aikido person will understand, which is it isn't so much about the verbal repartee, it's the fact that the attention, because what makes a woman freeze is that
Right.
the guy's putting attention on her,
Nice, 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 nice.
and her as a default will put attention on herself. So she has two people's attention on
Yeah,
herself.
yeah,
What did I
yeah.
do? Why is he asking me? What did I give him the wrong idea? Right? Instead of going, why are you asking me that question? Which would
Got
turn
it.
the attention back on the
and
other.
then there's less freeze because it's the attention's a big part of your work, right? I've seen that. I read that in your book too. Like it's a big focus. Yeah. All right, we're on time. I have to interview someone less interesting than you. So where do people find your stuff? Where do they find out more?
They could go to my website, weteachpower.com. It's easier than spelling my name. I'm also on Instagram, TikTok, all of the regular social media channels.
And it's Kasia, Kasia. Very
Yes.
sweet Polish person. I know that name. Urbaniak, spelled like urban Ayak.
Yeah, yeah. And I have a book out called Unbound that I think is quite great if I do say so myself.
Good. I just say to listeners, if you can get past the woke bit at the beginning, the rest is really good. So like that's what I'd say to my conservative brethren out there listening. So Kasia.
Woke beginning. Oh, you mean because it was written during the times where all those allegations were coming out, and I meant
At the beginning. So Kasia, thank you so much for joining us. Dziękuję.
Dziękuję. Thank you so much.